Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Go Premanandi. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Saraswati Vyasam.
Tito Jayamudiraye.
Tito Jayamudiraye.
Nasta Prayeshu Abhadresu.
Nasta Prayeshu Abhadresu.
Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavatam Sevaya.
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke.
Bhagavate Uttama Shloke.
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki.
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistiki.
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 17, The Punishment and Reward of Kali. She had the number right, Gokula. She had text 39 up there, but she wrote 40. They're like right next to one another on the same page. So she mistakenly wrote 40 up there, 39. So I was just going to do both of them, but anyway. Okay, so let's chant the Sanskrit. Punas cha yachamanya. Punas cha yachamanya. Jata rupam adat Prabhu. Jata rupam adat Prabhu. Tato nritam madam kamam. Tato nritam madam kamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam. Punaschaya chamanaya. Jatarupam adat Prabhu. Tato nritam madam kamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam. Punaschaya chamanaya. Jatarupam adat Prabhu. Tato nritam madam kamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam.
Punaschaya chamanaya. Jatarupamadat Prabhu. Tato nritam madam kamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam.
Punaschaya chamanaya. Jatarupam adat Prabhu. Tato nritam madam kamam. Rajo vairam cha panchamam.
Punashaya Chamanaya Jatarupam Madat Prabhu Tatolitam Madam Kamam Rajo Vairam Cha Panchamam Punashaya Chamanaya Jatarupam Madat Prabhu Tatolitam Madam Kamam Rajo Vairam Cha Panchamam Punaha again Cha also Yachamanaya to the beggar Jata Rupam gold Adat gave way Prabhu the king Tataha whereby Anritam falsehood Madam intoxication Kamam lust Raja on account of a passionate mood Vairam enmity Cha also Panchamam the fifth one personality of Kali acts for something more, and because of his begging the king gave him permission to live where there is gold, because wherever there is gold there's also falsity, intoxication, lust, envy, and enmity. Please repeat. The personality of Kali asks. For something more. And because of his begging. The king gave him permission. To live where there is gold. Because wherever there is gold. There's also falsity. Intoxication. Lust. Envy. And enmity. Okay, Srila Prabhupada's divine purport.
Srila Prabhupada.
Although Maharaj Parikshit gave Kali permission to live in 4 places, it was very difficult for him to find the places, because during the reign of Maharaj Parikshit, there was no such places. Can you imagine? No gambling casinos or lotteries or football pools or, throwing dice or poker in the back room. None of those things. No slaughterhouses. No slaughter industry. Yeah, no fast food restaurants, serving meat or certainly no fast food restaurants serving even seafood. Maybe there was some fishermen back there, but then there was some meetings offering sacrifice, but there was no slaughter industry, and no places of intoxication. There was no commercial places of intoxication. Amazing, and there was no prostitution industry, or we could say, pornography industry. On the internet, the pornography industry is the largest, container of volume of internet. It's a huge, huge industry, and our advertisement is also utilized like that. They take the sexuality of men and women to sell products. So none of that existed. There was no that type of falsity. That is, I guess, the best example of falsity is the advertisement industry, because it's falsely based on manipulating a person's sexuality to think that they will be sexually gratified by buying this razor or wearing this swimsuit or wearing those types of shoes or whatever. I mean, what falsity can there be? I mean, just a huge falsehood, just thrown right in everybody's face, just so somebody can capitalize. Continuing with Srila Prabhupada's purport. Therefore, Kali asked the king to give him something practical, which could be utilized for his nefarious purposes. Maharaj Parikshit thus gave him permission to live in a place where there is gold, because wherever there is gold, there are all the above mentioned four things. Because wherever there is gold, there are all of the above mentioned four things. And over and above them, there is also enmity. Because people, they hate whoever has the most or whoever has more than them. They have it just creates a hateful type of relationship. That's the influence of Kali, a deep, dark mode of ignorance. So, the personality of Kali became gold standardized. Here's Srila Prabhupada preaching to us modern people. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, gold encourages falsity, intoxication, prostitution, envy, and enmity. Even a gold standard exchange and currency is bad. Gold standard currency is based on falsehood because the currency is not on par with the reserved gold. The basic principle is falsity because the currency notes are issued in value beyond that of the actual reserved gold. This artificial inflation of currency by the authorities encourages prostitution of the state economy. Now, how is that? Prostitution is, certainly selling something, but they're not. They're using the word slightly different than, woman engaging in prostitution. So it's prostituting the economy because the value of the notes issued are less than what they are claiming it's worth. They're saying that it's backed up by gold, so $100, you have $100 of gold, but there may be only $1 of gold. So in that way, it's all prostituted. Is that the proper? I mean, how else could we describe that meaning, prostitution?
Well, one other way is that, say, what you're saying is definitely accurate, but I was thinking when I read it that, a congressman or a senator or a politician, or any politician, mayor, whatever, in order to, now you have to sell yourself with false advertising. And so you need campaign financing. So you make a deal with the corporate people. And so you prostitute yourself. You say, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. It's it's not he's just doing it based on the principles getting from pure Brahmins, getting counsel from them. That they're giving him, this is what the Shastra says, he will do whoever gives him money, he'll say that.
And the people with the money, they turn them into prostitutes.
Yeah.
I heard a perfect example of that recently. There was one gentleman elected to Congress from some state, And the guy was determined to be honest. So he was just a new congressman. He came into his office one day and there was a bag on his desk. Probably, he called security right away before even touching it. But, he looked in the bag and it was stacked full of $100 notes. No less than $100,000. So he calls and says, who put this bag on my desk? And so they say, well, Congressperson so-and-so. So he calls him up, what is this brown bag on my desk? He says, oh, that's just from special interest groups. You don't have to worry, you don't have to do anything for it. They're not asking anything. They're just giving it out to everybody, Later on, they may ask something. So in that way, they were already turning you into their person.
Right.
They had given you $100,000, but if you want more in the future, we're not asking anything now, but in the future, there'll be a need because we're trying to do good for society. So he actually gave it back. He sent it back to them. But there's very few that do that. Anyhow, this artificial inflation of currency by the authorities encourages prostitution of the state economy. It just makes it seem like we have more than what we really have. And it's become so bad. The price of commodities becomes artificially inflated because of bad money or artificial currency notes. Bad money drives away good money. In other words, with good money, this fan may cost $2. If I could pay for it with good money, which Prabhupada will describe later on as gold coins. So with a $2 little piece of gold, I could buy that. But with bad money, this fan's costing $20. Probably this fan could be bought for 50 cents in reality with good money, or even maybe less. But nowadays, I think this fan is $20 to $30. And to make matters worse, there's no longer any gold reserve or silver reserve. There's no reserve whatsoever to back up that what they call fiat money. Fiat money, that paper currency. It's just based on the strength of the government. And the strength of this government is its military complex. If anybody, dares to say anything, then they have to stand up to them militarily. Therefore, at least at this time, they can owe China $1 trillion or more. And if worse comes to worse, they'll have to go to war over it to collect it.
Come and get it.
So, bad money, it drives away the good money, and you're left in a world where there's enmity between one another. You can see it right now. Is there any enmity between China and America?
Oh, yeah.
China's saying, look, man, you always owe us so much money. You're complaining because, we discovered some intellectual property and we make it? What, you're trying to just hide it because somebody discovered how to make something? And America's saying, this is the strength of our country. We discovered this. We have to keep it a secret. I mean, even in copyrights, copyright's only good for 25 years. Then after that, everybody's got the copyright. Isn't that how it works? Isn't that the law?
You have a chance to redo it.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was 50, but...
50.
Maybe 50?
It depends on what kind of copyright you have. Whether it's like a song or something like that, you can have it for like 100 years or so. But then it becomes...
Or perhaps a name, like we have copyrighted the Hare Krishna movement.
Right. And then...
ISKCON.
But also, like, pharmaceuticals are supposed to be limited before they can be then... The company that did the... has the copyright on that medication, they try to hold it back from being free or being generic, or some, but they can get extensions on it. You know, as long as that, you know.
As long as they can prove they've never made their money back.
Yeah, exactly.
That they put into it.
But most of them are getting money from the government anyway.
Mm-hmm. Bad money drives away good money. Instead of paper currency, actual gold coins should be utilized for exchange. And this will stop prostitution of gold. Gold ornaments for women may be allowed. Listen to Prabhupada's administration of government policy here. Gold ornaments for women may be allowed by control. The government exerting control here. And not by quality. Not the quality of the gold, but by quantity. This will discourage lust, envy, and enmity. How is that? Because it's a lot cheaper and every woman can have a bunch of gold. Whereas when it's controlled by quality, only the rich can have it. And therefore it produces envy, lust, and enmity, to the extent that people break into someone's house, or they'll actually harm them to grab their gold. But when it's controlled by quantity, and there's a lot issued, and the value's a lot less, but it's still, it's still like, I don't know what, 2 karat gold instead of 24 karat gold. Then, everybody, who is earning a living can have some gold. And so there's therefore, there's less envy about it, and lust for it, and, enmity against those that have it. When there is actual gold currency in the form of coins, the influence of gold in producing falsity, prostitution, etc. will automatically cease. There will be no need of an anti-corruption ministry for another term of prostitution and falsity of purpose. The same ones stopping the government with its anti-corruption ministry, stopping the corruption, are often the most corrupt, but they're corrupt legally. So, you have to have government, but the government is legally corrupt in so many ways, unless it takes steps to be so transparent that it becomes anti-corrupt. But here's Prabhupada preaching, just like he preached yesterday. Well, who's willing to give up all the intoxication, illicit sex, meat eating, and gambling? I mean, we can't make any headway with that because all the citizens want it, and the power's in the people. If all the people say, you're out, Mr. Trump's out. If all the people say, hey, bite the dust, so-and-so, there's not much he can do but go off with his head between his legs, he or she. So, when the people become Krishna conscious, then, we can see some Krishna conscious change. But until then, just like yesterday, it doesn't seem possible those proposals that Prabhupada's making is ever going to happen. Stop chewing tobacco or even drinking tea. But here today, another one. Hey, put it all on a gold standard. Yeah, well, who's going to do it? Saudi Arabia? Maybe they got so much gold reserves, they'll say, yeah, okay. But nobody else in the world will do it, if anybody will do it. Certainly America is not going to do it because of the vast amount of inflation of our money and, the amount of debt that we have. Why would they do that? They'll just, if China wants their money, they'll just crank it out and give it to them. All right, here it is. But it's all just paper. Yeah, but if you don't utilize it to buy stuff, then you're going to find yourself in jail or bumped off if you're going to make too many waves about it all. Because, in this sense, might is right. You're not going to escape punishment. You know, just like Kali couldn't escape punishment from Pritchett. But here we see Pritchett is such a good and compassionate person that just because he surrendered, even though he is falsity personified, still he surrendered, and Pritchett gave him shelter. And even when he could not find shelter, he still asked for another place, instead of saying, no, I'm sorry, wherever you're just going to, create nothing but problems. Therefore, it's better I just do away with you. He had to submit himself to providence, that, hey, this isn't my duty. I have to follow the codes of my Dharma, and this person is surrendered, and he's simply asking for some place. And so I had to give him that place. And so he gave him that place where there's gold. And consequently, now, within a short amount of time, he's spread out everywhere. We don't have to go far back in history. I mean, since our recorded history in the West, he's been there. It'd be interesting to see. We know that he influenced Pritchett himself. Often it's depicted because of the gold crown on his head. That's where Kali resided and got into his head. And consequently, he put the snake around the sage, the dead snake, because he was insulted. He felt insulted. The sage was in meditation, and he began to think, and due to his distress, that the sage was just ignoring him, that there was some falsity about his meditation, even though there really wasn't. The sage was actually that deep in meditation that he could not recognize a guest who was in great need, practically dying of thirst, and was simply wanting some water. Pritchett was so noble, he didn't just take the water from the guy's place. You don't find these types of characters. All of us, we would just take the water. It's all right, he's in meditation, let me get some water, But Pritchett just got annoyed because he felt that, he was ignoring him. And sort of like the mentality that we see nowadays, where you think somebody is so puffed up because of their position that they just ignoring you, the little guy. So we would wonder, well, how could Pritchett feel like that? Because that was the dynamics. The Brahmins were considered a higher class. I mean, they didn't have to deal with worldly things. They could actually meditate on transcendence and transcend the miseries of life on an everyday basis, whereas a king has to deal with it on an everyday basis and punish those who are causing problems and reward those who are doing good. So on an everyday basis, he has to be judgmental. Is the supreme judge, whereas everybody else in society can avoid it to some degree, because the code is not to be a fault finder, not to unnecessarily criticize others. Everybody's got their superiors, their parents, their teachers, their aunts and their uncles who can correct them, their employers, or the government itself. So it doesn't need everybody else walking around, hounding on everybody about, their faults. But a king stuck every day, passing judgments. People have to come before him. He has to decide who's right, who's wrong, or, what the little splits of hair are, and make a proper decision. Not necessarily for everyone's satisfaction, although that may be there, but, according to Dharma. Like Bhaktivinoda, he many times unintentionally, I guess we can use the word unintentionally, but out of simply doing his Dharma, he created enmity against himself. Because sometimes he would have to reward, according to his duty as a judge, he would have to pass judgment against his own clan. In other words, many times he passed judgment against Hindus where there was a case being brought by a Muslim. And if Bhaktivinoda sided with the Muslim, naturally it aggravated the Hindu community. But, he had to do these things in the name of Dharma, because that's his job. So a king is stuck doing that all the time. So, that was Pritchard's life. So he could naturally fall into that mentality, by the influence of Kali. That look at this sage, he thinks he's so good that he can just ignore me because I'm a lowly king, that has to, carry weapons and fight and enforce codes of law in this material world. So he became very annoyed and he said, rascal, and he picks up the dead snake and puts it around him. And this didn't bother the sage. The sage was actually a very transcendental Brahmin. He woke up and threw it off. But his son, who had taken his birth there by the will of Providence, was not so advanced from previous lives. And he became greatly insulted and utilized his little bit of Brahminical power to curse the king. So, Kali Yuga, right from the beginning, quarrel. Kali, right from the beginning, created a quarrel between the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins. The Brahmins who are directing the Kshatriyas, and the Kshatriyas who are protecting the Brahmanas and the whole Brahminical culture. Immediately created a quarrel between them. And just amazing, the potency of Kali. And so who are we to try to overcome Kali? None of us, we were simply Kali's, not only as victims, we were as soldiers. After all, you can only be a victim for so long. Then you become like in those Star Wars movies. Everybody becomes simply Darth Vader's yes man. Darth Vader became the yes man. He used to be the good guy, and he became the yes man of the evil empire. So similarly, we weren't victims. We were soldiers of Kali. But by the potency of the holy name, our hearts became changed. So it's by the grace of God. Even Prabhupada says, religion doesn't spread except by the power of God. It's the only way religion can spread, especially in Kali Yuga. So it's by Lord Chaitanya's grace that this Harinam Sankirtan movement is spreading and people's hearts are becoming purified. And Kali can, in that sense, be defeated. Not by the strength of arms or of military rebellions, but by simply the saintly power of the Sankirtan Yoga, the constant chanting of the holy names of Krishna. Things are becoming slowly but surely changed in this world, and it's just it's an amazing thing to think about. How in the future Lord Chaitanya's movement will create its golden age, its age of goodness again, for a short duration, something like what we call an Indian summer in the fall. When the weather is actually much warmer than what it should be. So to have an age of goodness in Kali Yuga, Kali Yuga is bad. It had become so bad. All of Bharatavash, where Pritchard lived, was nothing but a rampant battlefield, practically speaking, with a workplace where people had to crank out wealth in the form of product, so that the so-called military leaders, the leaders of the world, could maintain their power structure. It's a fact that all of the money they collected went into maintaining a military complex which gave them that might to do whatever they wanted to do. And they administered justice. There could be no crime, especially in Aurangzeb's, where he made a fanatical Muslim rule, where Sharia law was the law. And if it was, and it was enforced by the rule of Sharia. Whether you were Hindu, Christian, whatever it be, under Aurangzeb's rule, it was heresy to think of anything else other than, what the Quran says. And that he enforced upon everybody. So previous to him, the Muslims thought we are a Muslim government in a non-Muslim land. And so they diplomatically dealt a lot of the time. Not all the time, but there was a lot of diplomacy there, to the extent that this Emperor Sok, who is the most famous of all the Mughal emperors, he would have all these meetings with Buddhists, Hindus, Jains, whatever it may be, Christians, and many times they would go there thinking that somehow ever they were going to influence him. But deep within himself, he was simply creating a new religion like Guru Nanak. He was trying to find that religion for his Indian empire, which consisted of people of multi-religions. So he was looking for something that would bring them all together. In that sense, he was a politician. But he wasn't a Muslim fanatic, because he was looking for something better. And it didn't serve him. You know, all of the Muslim mullahs and ebbers, they really, didn't like all this. And so when he died, his eldest son had the same attitude. And he wanted to do the same thing. But it's so vicious among these Kali Yuga Kshatriyas that from the time a kid comes of age in his mid-teens, he starts to compete even with his father to rule a kingdom. So, what to speak about when the father, who was strong enough to hold on to the power of government, what happens between the brothers. So the oldest son, who was the favorite of Asok and was a liberal like him, was defeated. And how was he defeated? Because they pointed out his faults. The brother who won pointed out his faults. Look, the guy's, he's going against Muslim rules, He's off. And he got the support of all. It became a jihad even against his brother. And he won. And then it just got worse and worse and worse into the reign of Aurangzeb, who thought of himself and was thought of by his Muslim people as a very pious person. And in a Muslim way, he was. But he was a iconoclast. He couldn't deal with, what he considered heresy. And that meant, in one sense, every Hindu temple, although many of his predecessors destroyed more Hindu temples than him, he would only take out the big ones that seemed to be a political threat, such as that famous temple in Varanasi, Vishwa Soma temple, something like that.
Vishwanath temple.
Big temple. He completely, razed that to the ground. So he implemented things like, taxes against being Hindu. You could convert if you wanted to, and that way you wouldn't have to pay it. But he did all these things. He just made life so hard, and then, just by the time he left, there was just so much animosity between all the different sects of people in India, including the Sikhs. The Sikhs were, threatened, and everybody was just completely opposed his reign. Anyhow, it's just an example of Kali Yuga, how bad things had gotten just in Bharatavarsha itself. It's just terrible, fighting, constantly going up. We think the Native American and the Civil War, to gain freedom for African American. The fighting that went on here that we may be more familiar with as Americans is nothing compared to the fighting that went on in India for many, many, many more years than what went on here. Constant war, and constant work for the common man. You had to produce. If the king didn't get his money, and it started from, one zamindar, a landholder, maybe Hindu himself, he has to get the money. Then that guy over him has to get the money from him. And then the next guy over him has to get the money until the emperor gets the money. And then the emperor pays all of his military people. That's where 90% of the budget went. It went to this general and that general and his people and their people. Complete military complex. So then where else do they get money but to go off and to raid and to get it from some place that's not under their dominion? So everyone's protecting and attacking each other constantly. For 800-900 years. Kali Yuga. But Prabhupada's telling them, hey, and back then it may have been a gold standard even. But nowadays it certainly isn't. Prabhupada's saying, hey, put it all on a gold standard. Who is going to do that? All we can do is keep putting Prabhupada's message out there, and things gradually get better. Government may take it up, rather than just seeing rampant inflation. Like, look at Venezuela. What happened? People could not even afford the basic medical necessities of life. They would have to go to Colombia, another poor country, just to eat, because the inflation was so bad in Venezuela. Just terrible inflation. It happened, after World War I in Germany. It happened all over the world, but there it was probably the worst. So, it can happen anywhere. Why do we think they work so hard to try to keep the dollar from, going crazy? They have to back it up somehow or other so that it just doesn't, create huge inflation. People don't trust it no more, and everybody trying to get their money out of the bank. And then if you got it out, what if it's not worth anything? I mean, say you have $100,000, and so they give you $100,000 in cash. And just imagine if it's not worth anything. We all know the value of $100,000 now. What if tomorrow your $100,000 isn't worth anything? You can't buy anything with it. I mean, these things have happened in the past. And, it could happen, in the future. Therefore, Prabhupada said, what is real wealth? Real wealth is land, grain, and cows. Everybody can live and eat, nicely. Of course, if you got a tyrannical government, they just come and take the land away from you. Or they don't take it away from you. They say, you have this land? All right, we want you to produce this much. And hey, you're going to have to give up this much because we're giving it to so-and-so because he's going to produce this much. And we'll be back next month to check on you. So, all of us are going to be getting out of the temple real early because we got to get out and work the field and we got to produce stuff because not only do we have to eat, but we have to feed them constantly. Day after day, year after year, life after life. Your children grow up to do that. You're just economic slave. But that's what goes on. In Kali Yuga. So somehow or other, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, this isn't just meant for the Brahmanas, but the next few verses I think will make it more clear. Actually, there's a verse coming up with. It's really emphasized even in the verse that this is meant for the public leaders in society. It's meant for the political leaders. Not only for the Brahmins, but it's meant for, those who are going to manage government. So it'd be, real interesting. That, here's a little preview. Therefore, whoever desires progressive well-being, especially kings. Kings are heads of government, religionists, public leaders, Brahmanas, and sannyasis should never come in contact with the 4 above mentioned principles, that meat eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex. So, anyway, a wonderful chapter here. We have to take it to heart and make our International Society for Christian Consciousness more like that. Of course, we don't print money, so we don't deal with a gold standard, so to speak. But we have to speak out. The Bhagavatam and Srila Prabhupada's perspective on this, and whether they'll take it or not. We can only assume that one day down the line, as things get better and better and better, that we'll actually see government operating like that on a gold standard. With all these things, meat eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex, highly, highly licensed and controlled. A cleaned up world. Can you imagine a cleaned up world where you can drink out of rivers? I mean, they got people say that you shouldn't even take a shower in city water. That bleaches your hair, it gets into your skin, it makes you sick if you do it day after day and year after year. They invent some sort of shower head that takes the stuff out just like they do for drinking it. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot more codes that govern what you drink than what you shower in. So, can you imagine just having clean water again and where the soil is good all over the world, and they're actually turning desert into, a land that can be cultivated, and fresh air. You don't have to walk around in Delhi, Beijing, and God knows what other cities, Mexico City, wearing a mask, Los Angeles. Wearing a mask because you can't breathe the air. Now, when I was visiting Ramesh, there was one of his uncles took sannyas from one Gaudiya sannyasi. Can't remember his uncle's name right now. Pabhinabha, I think. Anyway, he had one of his disciples gave him a van that was owned by a city, by the water department. And in that city, and in most buses in all the big cities in America, they run off of natural gas. Mm-hmm. And he showed me the exhaust pipe. He said, see that exhaust pipe? This van's 10 years old. There's no emissions. You can't find a bit of crud on that exhaust pipe because there's no emissions with natural gas. And it costs generally $1 a gallon. So you fill up for $20, 20 gallons, and you don't create any emissions. So, at least they got all the buses and, government offices, most of them using it. And there's many stations. I mean, in Atlanta, there's all kinds of stations. Houston, Oklahoma City, New Orleans only has a couple. But you can get an app that directs you to where to get the gas so that you can actually travel across the United States using, natural gas as a fuel. That it's not really that rare of a thing. You just have to get a vehicle made for it. So then, things, we see the progress. I mean, it could again be the 1950s or 60s, where there was really not as much social progress. There's been a lot more social progress and a lot more progress to clean up the environment. So, and even, some progress to clean up government. I mean, it doesn't, they all are so vicious that they're always ready to pull down the guy who's on the opposite party in whatever position he's in. So they're all looking for some sort of corruption. But it keeps everybody completely on their toes, although so many of them are, on the take. Those who get caught, by their enemies, generally speaking. So, go on with the preaching, go on with the chanting, and, it's all becoming better by Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Yeah, Maharani?
The class is good. I have 3 little things I want to share. Today is David's birthday and his son's birthday.
Oh, wow.
They're only 2 or 3 minutes apart. How many times that happens? that one. And Guru Maharaj posted today in his Facebook, there is over 10,000, check this out, this is really neat, over 10,000 disciples, and he's doing really hard work with his preaching, giving class, every day. He says it like, I can't physically be anywhere, and I'm giving this class. Hope that a lot of my disciples will listen. Out of that over 10,000, I think 467 is listening, and the Facebook keeps up on it. And then the Facebook pulls out and shows it to him, the top 10. And guess who is number 1? Mother Haridwani.
Top 10 of watching his classes?
Watching his classes.
Oh.
The top 10, number 1, right there is Mother Haridwani. And the 10 people that pulled out, 6 is Kevalia. The 2 is from New Talavana. And the whole world is just looking at this.
Wow.
And he's like, it showed it to him, and he was like, look,
And I got a picture from Rasarajan Laja that shows Laja giving him a donation. Although even when they put the microphone up to him to talk, they got a doctor's suit on with gloves on and a mask on just to do that. So somehow ever she was able to hand him the envelope without having a mask or anything on.
No, this is just like planned, she's just waiting, and then Subal is waiting to take a picture. They just come out, and you can see she just jumps out there and just hands it over. It's just like planned.
Before they escort her away. Carrying too many
nobody could do
journeys.
anything, Nobody can say, hey, go wear a mask. They can't do it. They planned it so well, It's just like, right then he comes in and just run over there. But he stops and picks up the envelope, and he's looking at it. So she had a moment to stand there, and then she ran off.
So that's in Chennai. Yeah, so power of preaching.
Yeah. He
Dr.
really
David?
wants to
So I had a
service,
comment
Amazing.
with Prabhupada speaking about gold, cheap gold for everyone. So would it be wise now that the US dollar has some value to buy as much as possible, start diluting it and start circulating these gold, silver coins within ISKCON, so that when people come into ISKCON, we're not dealing with money anymore, we're exchanging in, coins.
I don't know if we'll get together with it. I don't know if the government will. They might allow you to do something just internally.
Not letting the government know about
But again,
this.
that's sort of prostituting it because Prabhupada said it has to be pure gold. He was talking about controlled gold, cheap gold for jewelry, for ladies and stuff like that. Men with rings or whatever.
Cheap.
But to make it into coin for exchange, then again, that's prostituting money because it has to be the value of it has to be the gold.
Right.
See Krishna Shraya first, then the prayer.
I saw a documentary a few months ago. It said that India had an immense amount of gold, but it was held by families and particularly...
Yeah, they don't even produce as much.
Right. And so to have jewelry, like you have a gold ring, right?
Right.
So that's personally owned gold. It doesn't have to be a coin.
Yeah.
But that could be an emergency.
Exchanged.
Yeah. And so to own gold is, in a personal way, in many communities in America, Afro-American too, they own gold jewelry.
They do that
and
too.
you need to take off a link off that big thing. You could take that link off and use that.
Right.
And not have to trade off.
Definitely in India they do that. That's why they have more gold than any place else in the world. Because
Right.
it's just always been part of tradition since time immemorial that the families save gold as security.
And so it seems like this is what Prabhupada is saying, that personally owned gold and jewelry, quantity versus quality, is a good thing.
What I'm suggesting is...
So get more rings.
Right. Like within ISKCON, now that, right now, while there's money, while money has value, it'd be wise to start making, like you said, you could, a chain you could take off, and within ISKCON you come into guests. It'd be a fun experience. Guests would come in, they would exchange their money for gold, and they can buy products here. So with their gold, they're giving it back to ISKCON.
Silver.
Or silver, yeah, anything, yeah, metals.
Gold is too
That
Or
is
copper, yeah.
Prabhupada didn't, I'm sorry, go ahead. But Prabhupada didn't mention silver.
Well, if you talk about gold coins, Prabhupada said gold coins are good, but gold coins, in my understanding, are made a certain size so that the coin is the weight, is the quantity.
Right.
So it's not like prostitution. But the other thing would be that then it's more like a straight barter. I have X amount of valuable gold, you have X amount of goods, and we barter like that. Trade it, rather than using symbolic materials, some materials that symbolize wealth. That can be inflated.
And it's,
I believe that's what it's saying. That's what I understand.
Symbolic material. Oh, yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
like
yeah,
paper
yeah,
money.
like paper money.
paper money.
Yeah.
Or our coins.
Yeah. all
Coins
that
have a little
is.
bit of value, but not a tremendous amount. Yeah, Krishna. Sure.
it's something called fractional reserve lending also, which they actually not only have a piece of paper, $1 for not even $1 worth of gold, but they can reloan that dollar 9 times.
Yeah, yeah.
So it even devalues that piece of paper
Wow.
and multiplies it for good of the lender. So the lender can make even more money. The banks.
That's crazy.
It's out there.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.